Let's see if we're live. See us on Twitch. See and hear us on Twitch. Qu'est-ce que tu veux? Moi, je fais un programme d'échecs maintenant. Oui. Live on YouTube as well. Hey, Chess Optics. How you doing? Hope you're doing great. But if not, hopefully we can provide a bright spot to your day or night. Oui, oui, chérie. Tu veux un quoi? Un câlin? Tu veux un câlin de moi? Okay. Sorry, folks. She's asking for a hug. I can't say no to that. You know you cannot say no when a cute kiddo asks for a hug. I'll be right back. Right back. We've got a tournament for you all tonight. Or a game, at least. Friday night fights. Oh, ma chérie. C'est adorable. Merci. Oh, tu me dis bonne nuit? Je t'aime. Dors bien, chérie. Voilà. Tiens ça pour toi. Ok, je te garde ça. Celui-là aussi? Ok, très bien. J'ai les pièces d'argent pour toi. Just moved into a new place. Nice, that sounds good. It's normally, or at least in my experience, it's kind of fun and exciting moving into a new place that's not yet congested with your stuff, that's open and free, and it gives you a chance to come up with new thoughts and new ideas too. So, congrats on that. Whew.
Is it spooky upstairs?
Yeah. Ooh, spooky. Alrighty. So, let me fix the fight command for tonight. Let me just get that ready. I'm going to edit up MooBot for the Twitch folks. So, MooBot, how you doing, MooBot? 16 plus. And then this one here. I'm just putting in tonight's URLs. Have over here. So let's save that. Now let's just check that command. Looks good. We could go post it in Discord too. Why not? You know. Let's see, Discord tournaments. Hey, Chess Me Out. I'll tell you about my Friday in a second. Right now I'm posting stuff to bring more people to Friday Night Fights to join us. So it's just you get to see what it looks like when I type. And that's it for the moment. Weekend Rapid Suisse is on Saturday this weekend to leave time on Sunday to celebrate your mamas. Whoops, I did a little mistake. Weekend Rapid. That's good. All right, now I'm just gonna keep typing. Sorry, going to Twitter to let the folks there know that we got our tournaments coming up in a second here. So Just Dojo's weekly Friday night fights kick off in 20 minutes. You can buy any time to play or chat with us. And then I'll give them this link over here. All right, so very kind Chess Me Out wished that I was having a good Friday. There were some great things this Friday. Had a couple Chess Dojo meetings in the morning. That was fine. A little bit of work. That's good. Then did some cleaning of the house. That's good. Took care of a lot of stuff that needed to be stuffed in our life. And I was feeling fine. Had a light lunch. Went to the pool. Shattered my record for the 1,000 yard freestyle, which was awesome. I was so pumped. And then ever since then, I've been feeling weird. My partner's like, you overdo it every time you go, you overdo it, and my partner and a friend have been trying to convince me that when I go to exercise, I should exercise without knocking myself out. And they say just once a week or once every 2 weeks, do an exercise that knocks you out. But the other days, do an exercise that doesn't quite knock you out. But my way of doing everything is do it to exhaustion, in order to push your limits. That's just how I've always done everything. I'm not a professional athlete or anything like that, but in order to be as strong as I could be for my chess tournaments, I'm used to, running till I fall down, or swimming till I throw up on the side of the pool, or, when your brain is telling you, I can't solve one more tactic, you just force your brain to solve one last tactic that night, right? And then when you feel completely exhausted, you spar an endgame because you're going to be tired when you play an endgame in your tournament. And that's just kind of how I've always done everything. And I only started doing sort of gym, weights, equipments kind of things for the first time this year. And I'm mostly swimming because I'm enjoying swimming so much. But I do the weight kind of stuff maybe once or twice in a week. And the instructions I was given on that also say you do everything to exhaustion. So when you're doing a set of lifting a weight or something like this, right? My instructions clearly say try and keep your form good, but keep going until you can't do your last rep and you have to give up. And then based on how many reps you can do, then you'll know when you can move on to the next weight. So my instructions there that were given to me by a trainer at the YMCA clearly say to do every single set to exhaustion. But the truth is that exercising this year has probably cost me 3 hours a day of work, because it's an hour to go and exercise, but I'm so dead after I exercise. That for an hour or two afterwards sometimes, well, it depends on the day. Some days, for whatever reason, it's not quite as bad. I recover in 20 minutes. Other days, it's the whole afternoon, where I can't work very hard afterwards. So, I don't know. Someone's asking for $2 million? Wait. Chess Me Out. I'm an adult chess player. I was thinking of a way to do an open challenge bet, but not sure exactly how to do it. The general terms go like this. Anyone can be $2 million. I get 2 years of time. If I do not increase my FIDE by 200 ELO, then I will give the investor back $3 million. Thoughts? That's a cool experiment. Depending on what your level is, 200 ELO is an easy bet or a near impossible bet, right? If you're 2,200, then a 200 ELO bet is a very intense bet, right? You're saying you're going to become an IM as an adult. If you're 2,600 and you make that bet, then it's basically impossible, right? You're saying you're going to become Magnus Carlsen. If you're rated 500 and you make that bet, well, it's obvious. Almost any 500 could do it in 2 months. with much less than $2 million, right? Maybe like $1,000 and 2 months would be enough for a 500 to gain 200 elo. So it really depends where you're at, how interesting that bet is going to be. The other thing I can say is if somebody gives you $2 million and you're supposed to pay them back $3 million, they also have no way to know you're not just going to walk away with the $2 million and not even play chess. So you would need something to secure the loan, basically. Like a mortgage is basically a loan that's secured by your house, right? So you would have to put up some kind of properties or things of value that are worth $2 to $3 million, I think, to get anybody to trust you with that kind of a loan. Yeah. I'm going Monday through Friday swap for Prez with the gym. Monday through Friday. Yeah, if you're 2200, the bet becomes pretty interesting. Keep the money in escrow the whole time. That makes sense, yeah. That seems like a solution to that. I'm not an expert on fancy financial operations, but what you're saying about escrow sounds reasonable to me. Like that could be a thing you could do. Welcome back, Chess Pawn. Good to see you. You want to know who's in the arena tonight? Sure, let's have a look. In the 1600 plus section right now, I only see one 2000 rated player. If I go to the under 1600 arena, let's see if we've got some folks hanging out there. And we've got 3 folks waiting there, so that's good. They only need one more. Chess Me Out, you want to focus on the mechanics of the thought experiment. Can a 2200 adult improver gain 200 FIDE ELO in 2 years? Yeah, are you yourself 2200 or is this just a thought experiment at this point? Quads at the mechanics tomorrow. Right on, Mahogi. Right on. Right, you'd have to go play a bunch of the right tournaments. And you would need some of that money to invest. That makes sense, for sure. Do you have the third million like sitting around? Like if you lose the bet, are you able to pay it off or not? That's another part of the financial side of the question. But you know, I think for a 2200 to gain 200 ELO as an adult by just training really hard and being relieved of all financial requirements and having access to any training materials they wanted and coaches and tournaments and stuff, I think it's an interesting question. Like the answer is not, it's not obvious if you would win or lose the bet. Yeah. Like basically without knowing the person, I would think it's maybe 40% chance they would make it, 60% against, which is close enough to be interesting. But then of course I would have to look at what the person has done so far to evaluate their odds, you know, like is this somebody really talented who has not had a lot of opportunities yet, or is it somebody who, you know, tried to play professionally, really went for it, already spent 2 years playing tournaments in Spain and Italy, and 2200 was their max, and then they switched to a career, and now 10 years later they want to see if they can do better at age 30 than they could do at age 20, right? Then the odds are going to be like 1% or something. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like this is also Chess Me Out when we do these sort of like chess coaching contests, right? I'm always looking at what, and you're sort of, you know, like, are you familiar with Ultimate Sensei Chess Me Out? This show where we had like a bunch of players within a 200-point rating band, and we had them play some like rapid chess against each other, and 4 coaches watch them play and then draft who they want on their team. And then you've got a certain period of time to coach those players up. And then there's a tournament at the end that's like a more serious tournament, and you see which coach has like brought their players along the farthest or the highest, right? It's a similarly spirited kind of thought experiment as yours, right? And it's something we've actually done. You could watch the show. It's only, 2 months, not 2 years, right? But it's that kind of idea. So, when doing some contests like that, I'm always looking at like to what degree is the person's current level, whatever it is, what amount of that is like their talent, what amount is something that's held them back, what has held them back, how easy it is it to change the things that have held them back. You see what I mean? So for example, we did this show and there was a player who was who had studied a ton. So time to study was not holding them back, right? And they were playing a bunch, so that wasn't holding them back, right? What was holding them back? They were always in time pressure. And they were running out of time and they couldn't finish off games where they had good positions. But their chess knowledge seemed really good, their strategic understanding and so forth. So that was somebody where I thought on a short period of time, like 2 months, that's a very fixable problem, right? Where you can unleash like 100-point gain for that player, pretty guaranteed in 4 to 6 weeks. So, looking for different things like that. So basically, with this, in theory, 2200 trying to make 2400, I'm curious the most curious thing I am is like, what opportunities did they have and how hard have they ever gone for it before? The more opportunities and the more they've gone for it before, the less likely it is that unlocking opportunities and time for them is going to change anything, right? And the less opportunities they've had and the more they've always, had a job or been in school or been in school plus working a job to pay for school, the more likely it is that there's a lot of untapped potential, right? That's kind of basic, right? So, yeah. So the number one thing I would look at, and you could look much more detail into somebody's personality and then make a smarter bet, right? But the first thing I would look at absolutely would be like, how much, time and resources have they put in before? Because they've already put in time and resources, and then adding time and resources won't do much. Now, everybody can unlock more than what they've done so far, right? That person might just need a coach to fix some kind of psychological problem, or they might have had access to certain resources but not others. So there's all kinds of things you could fiddle with. Like anyone could go up a bit, but 200 FIDE from 2200 to 2400 that's pretty serious. There you're talking also about like a level where some people probably don't have the talent to ever reach 2400 no matter what the conditions. So then you also have to get into like what's the sort of baseline talent level of the player you're looking at. Yeah, I sort of disagree with that. I think that you can untap more skills and potential after certain ages. I don't tend to believe that you're shut off at those ages. And I agree with you. That a lot of what holds older players back is not biological, but responsibility, like life responsibilities. I agree with you on that as well. By the way, hey, Raise the Curve, how you doing? Hope you're good. And ZJ was asking about overlearning, right? Yeah. So ZJ Termination, we don't have a specific video or discussion of that topic. By the way, folks, there's 4 or 5 minutes left to join the tournament, and we don't have enough players right now to have a tournament. So if anyone's hoping to play tonight, you actually have to join really soon. I want to get into ZJ's question, obviously, and I love talking about everything with you all. But if folks are hoping to watch some chess tonight, oh, we've got enough people in the over 1600 section now. Great. The under 1600 still needs one more player, folks. So if there's anyone under 1600 kind of thinking maybe I should play, know that you've got 3 to 4 minutes to get in there. Okay. Bumps is 1 week into the dojo training. And Bumps, I'm going to get to your question right after I address ZJ's, okay? So, hold that question. And for anyone under 1600 who wants to play, let me just give some links as well. Here's the club link for anyone over in YouTube. You can maneuver through that club link. You see it'll take you to our club, and then you scroll down just a tiny bit. Upcoming events, here are the Friday night arenas. And for folks over in Twitch, here's the exclam fight command. Saisam is playing for the first time and excited. Right on, Saisam. It's going to be great. Hope you enjoy it. And it won't be your last time, right? So you get excited, but you don't need to get nervous because there's always another time for now, All right, so to ZJ's question, right. So we don't have like a specific training or discussion on it, but I've talked about this concept dozens of times on stream. It's been discussed now and then with Kostya and Jesse as well, right? So it comes up, we talk about this, and basically we warn heavily against overlearning. We think it's a very common thing for people to do in the chess world. We think lots of people are overlearning, especially people trying to memorize openings on Chessable. I don't know what you're doing on Chessable. I know they've got non-opening stuff as well, but especially like memorizing openings on Chessable is a very typical way people overlearn. And in general, my suggestion on training is that almost anybody's training should always have three main pieces to it: playing and looking over your games, doing some calculation practice of some kind, whether it be just learning basic patterns for a beginner or doing like really, really hard 20-minute deep calculations for a master. And number three, one single topic of focus that you're working on and learning for 2 to 6 weeks at a time. So that could be king and pawn endings or Alyekin's best games or the Dutch defense. You see what I mean? So for most people, I would recommend only studying one thing at a time, studying that thing over several weeks. And that one thing you're studying is likely taking up at most a third of your training time. Because a lot of time should go to playing your games and reviewing them, and a chunk of time should be going to calculation, like an hour a day for a really serious person, and maybe 15 minutes a day for a more beginner or casual student of the game, somebody with a little bit less time for their total training. So beyond that, almost everybody is overlearning and not integrating their knowledge into their games. And in fact, overlearning makes a lot of people play worse the more they study. And if they're practicing, they might be getting better, and then their getting better is being hidden by the fact that they're learning so much that it's making them worse. Basically what happens is, if in the game you're trying to think about too many things, you're getting yourself into time pressure, your thought process isn't integrated yet, you don't know when to move, you don't know how to make decisions, you get stuck in paralysis around some factor, or you forget a more basic factor, etc., right? So there's like a million ways that overlearning actually makes people worse. So that's my take on it. All right, our tournaments are starting. We've got 9 players in the 1600 plus arena. Let me make sure the under 1600 got that 4th player. Let's have a quick look. Under 1600, copy link. Let's go here. See if they got the 4th player. Oh, they did. All right, great. So we're in for some games, folks. To everybody who's about to play, I'm going to say goodbye to them and wish them well before I move on to Bump's question, right? So Bump's your questions next, but to everybody else who's going to play tonight, David's parting words of, advice and comfort and encouragement. First of all, good on you for playing. Bravo. Welcome to Friday Night Fights for anyone who it's their first time. These are really good games. Most likely your opponent will be happy to talk to you about the game afterwards. You're going to get a good quality opponent who's going to care about the game. Try to monotask during your game. Be sure not to listen to the stream while you're playing, because I'll be talking potentially about your game. Worst case, it could be cheating, but even best case, it's just going to be distracting if you hear me talking about Joe's game while you're playing Sally's game, right? So try to monotask while you play. Put away your phones. I don't have my phone, by the way. I don't know where it is. So if you're trying to call me, sorry. And just kind of focus on doing one thing for a while. Enjoy that feeling of being immersed in the game and nothing else screaming at you and demanding your attention. Have fun with your game. All my commentary is recorded both on Twitch and on YouTube, so you can go back and watch it afterwards if your game was covered. And once you've played a game, you can come rejoin us in the chat and we can talk about the game together. Finally, make sure that you're in live chess because the games are starting in 10, 9, 8 seconds. And use your time. For those of you who are going to play the game in like 10 seconds, you've got 45 minutes or 90 minutes to play. Enjoy that time you have and use it. Yeah. All right. So we're going to open up a couple games that are getting started already. Over here. So that gives us two games already open. Shadow King, if you're out there waiting for an opponent, just hang around a bit. The next time somebody joins, you'll probably get a game in a few minutes or so. So everything's okay. The tournament kicked off. You just have to be a little patient here. Now let's scroll up and get to Bump's question. Oh, Raise the Curve. You've just been in New York City, probably visited a chess club while you were there. Super fun. Happy for you. All right, so Bump said, 1 week into my journey with the dojo training and chess in general, how do I avoid getting frustrated losing so much? Right, is it possible I'm playing too much and should spend more time learning with the cohort materials? How much should I be playing each day? It's unlikely that you're playing too much. If you're a beginner, playing is like the main thing you want to do. I would make sure that you fit in a few tactical puzzles every day. Let's say 15 minutes minimum. You sound like somebody who's serious and willing to do it, so I'll say 15 minutes minimum, and I don't think you'll balk at that and be like, oh, it's too much. David's treating me like a pro. 15 minutes a day you can do, and depending on how you like it and how you're doing, you could be doing 30 minutes a day of tactics as well, and that would be fine. There's not too much you need to learn in terms of studied material if you're a beginner, but try talking to your opponents after you lose so you can learn something from the opponent. That's like going to be a huge resource for you. Normally, after somebody wins a game, they're in a pretty good mood. Anybody ever seen a chess player after winning a game? Life is so good. I forgot that there were genocides in the world. You don't understand how beautiful the world is. So odds are that right after they've won a game against you, they're going to be in a great mood, willing to give you some valuable advice. Yeah? Also, if you've only been learning for a week, let me echo what Chess Me Out says. Take it as a marathon, not a sprint, right? You got to spend years losing to get where some of the rest of us are. We lost and lost and lost and lost, in order to get good. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with the frustration piece of that, right? Because you shouldn't really be getting frustrated. It's pretty normal to lose if you're early on in your journey. Normally people get more frustrated further on when they've studied for like 3 years, and let's say their rating's 1550, and they work really hard and they get it up to 1600, and then they hit a bad streak and drop back down to 1550, and then they're really frustrated because they've spent 3 years working on the game and now they're going down. That's frustration. You don't even know frustration yet, Bumps. You don't even know frustration, but we're going to build your character, shall we speak, right? By getting you smacked around in chess. You're going to build character. You're going to become more resilient, more okay with losing some games and so forth. And, keep at it. Expect to lose, but I think if you can pull learning out of the losses right away, that's going to be good for you. Another small thing I would say is when people ask, how do you know who's going to get good at chess? I think the number one indicator of who's going to get good at chess, this is David's number one indicator, is how they react to losses. For me, that's the number one indicator of who's going to become an incredible chess player. You could think talent, you could think work ethic, you could think memory, you could think of all kinds of factors and things, right? To me, that's obviously, it's a mix of those things. Somebody with no talent is not going to become Magnus Carlsen, right? nor somebody without any work ethic, right? But I think the most important thing to have to get to the very top, the thing that probably basically nobody at the top doesn't have, is taking losses in the right way. Like being the right amount upset. If they don't care at all, they're not going to make it. If they're so torn up about it that they're in pain and they don't want to play another game because of... Oh, we had a really nice long goodnight here before she went up. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Caring too much, being too afraid of repeating that pain, those people aren't going to make it ever, right? The people who are somewhat upset, but somehow the way their brain works, it's just like immediately channeling the upsetness into energy for further study, inquiry, improvement. That's like the number one most important character trait I would look for in somebody to predict whether or not they're going to become a really strong player. They have to care, they have to be motivated, they have to have resiliency, they have to have like a positive way of taking something, and like turning everything that happens to them into fuel. Right? So now I'm listing out 6-7 character traits, but I can see all of that stuff just in how somebody reacts to losing. You see what I mean? So when you observe how somebody loses, that's really where you see, does this person have like the key constellation of personality traits to become a top chess player? Is there a problem with my stream? Let me just check if it says... My stream doesn't think it's dropped any frames. There are a few people who are pretty good who lose horribly, but you'll still see them like turning that anger mostly into studying versus into just brooding and negative spirals of bad thought. You know what I mean? So there are people who lose and they go and like punch a hole in a wall. There are people who lose and they go into a spiral of negative talk to themselves, right? Saying like, oh, you're so terrible. Of course, leave it to you to blunder that position, blah. And then they're just like, why do I even take you to tournaments? Talking to themselves, right? So you see people who have those reactions. I know some people who are the type to kick a wall, who did make it to professional levels. But almost all of them were people who didn't dwell in that kind of mood too long. You know what I mean? Like they kick the wall, they scream, but it's for... 5 minutes, and by minute 6 they're studying chess. Okay, that's like the important thing to see. It's not just how do they react in the first 10 seconds after losing, but in minute 6 they're studying chess again. These kind of people, right? So that's really, really important. Like I myself have cried once after losing a chess game, and been really upset. I know somebody who's in the top 2 players in the world who I think has cried once or twice after losing a chess game. But these are also people who are studying after losing a last round game. There's no game tomorrow to prepare for. You could be chilling out. You could be going to a bar. And these are people who are studying on the night of the 9th round of a tournament. So... Korchnoi was a sore loser, yep. Took it very seriously. That sounds very fun, Don Mahogi, yeah. All right, let's talk about some of our friends' games, huh? Let's get into some games. So, here we've got an opening called the Philidor defense. Names are not that important, but it's a defense where black tries to defend the e-pawn in the center with the d-pawn. It limits this bishop's early activity. But, you know, it just solidly holds a portion of the center and leaves room for these 3 pieces to develop pretty well, right? So white correctly grabs a little bit more center. And black's going to try and hold this pawn, but that blocks in this bishop. White goes quickly for a trade. And then black does this clever little move with the pawn, which just kind of dominates this knight. White's bishop tries to develop actively, but it's also going to be in danger of getting swooped up by these black pawns kind of limiting white's pieces. So white has to be very careful how they handle the potential of black playing b5 with the queenside pawns. Those pawns can put the white pieces into slightly bad shape. At the moment, if black plays b5, you know, ideally white can play bishop f7 check, king f7, and attack black because black's playing a lot of pawn moves. So black played bishop e7 to keep the knight off of g5. That makes sense. Oh yeah, also if b5, by the way, check here, white even has the move knight e5 instead of knight g5 because this queen's undefended. I could ZJ, yeah. For sure. If that were at stake. Yeah. Okay, so now white castles, going all out for development. This was a moment where white could also consider a4 to stop the b5 move from black, right? White castles, black goes b5. All right, so can white sacrifice something to attack since black's not properly respecting the rules of development? All right. Party like it's 1999. Yeah, it's important to know what's one's limits. I think ZJ, if like I had to do it and I could, you know, leave my family behind while I saved the earth, I think I could do it in 2 years. All right, so here's what I have in mind for white. Takes. Here. Boom. The bad news is I'm trading off all my developed pieces. The good news is I'm not sacrificing very much, right? So I've traded 2 pieces for rook and 2 pawns. It looks pretty plausible, right? I mean, I'm not even really behind in material here. So it's just an interesting game. Yeah, I would strongly consider that as white because I don't love retreating. Maybe a little bit of a weakness of mine. Don't love retreating. So I would have strongly looked at knight b5, bishop f7 here. White retreats. Black still not close to castling kingside at all. And here we've got white thinking. So what's white going to come up with? White wants to get aggressive here. Hey, free development for the bishop. Sure. Yeah, that's very appetizing. Okay, so white didn't have to think too long about this. This is going to be nice. I was looking at moves like, you know, a4, trying to start breaking open these pawns for my pieces. I was looking at knight to g5, going after f7, but bishop e3 for free. I mean, why would we not play bishop e3 first? Yeah. Black's definitely playing with fire here. They're trying to put these pieces into bad shape. And if black had time to go knight f6 and castles, you know, and then maybe they're playing a5, we might start seeing that white's pieces are kind of awkward, right? But as long as white has the lead in development and the black king is not even threatening to castle, there's definitely room for bad things to happen. And black hasn't been developing, so we can say bad things happen to bad people, right? c5, opening up a gaping hole on d5, positionally and tactically, right? This is an outpost square for white's pieces. It's also a very useful square tactically for white right now in this opening. And if bishop 10186 takes their time right now. They could knock this game out of the park here on move 10. Black was not careful enough with that c5 move. Man, that pawn on c6 was like the crux of Black's position in a weird way. This humble little pawn. Yeah, Far Eastern Black should just not be playing c5 in the Philidor. Don Mahogi, are you asking if I am risk averse in slow chess? I'm not particularly risk averse in slow chess or in blitz chess. I take different risks in blitz chess and slow chess, I could say. Because sometimes there are moves in blitz chess that look risky that I basically decide I don't have the time to calculate them, so I don't. Or I calculate them and they look promising, and then I still don't play it because I realize I don't have enough time to play the position that's coming after because I'm bad at finishing in blitz games. Whereas in classical chess, I will be very confident that I can play well in those risky positions. So there are some risks that I will take in classical. And then there are certain risks that I won't take in classical and that I might try sometimes in a blitz game or whatever, because it's sort of more of like, oh, it's just a learning game. Let's just see what kind of position this leads to. Stuff where I really can't figure out how good or bad it is. That's right, Swap for Prez. Queen d5 would probably be the best option here. Let's see if white went into d5. They went in with the knight, which is not bad, but it still leaves the bishop potentially stuck here, right? The move queen d5 was immediately tactically winning, attacking the rook and the pawn. How much time did white spend on this? 2 minutes. That's not bad. At some point you see it or you don't see it, Maybe bishop wasn't so aware of these kind of opening tactics of the double attacks. They've got similar tactics with the queen on f3, right? If there's no pawn on e4, some of you might know. That's another square for double attacks on f7 and a8 when the squares are available. So we got knight d5 with a pleasant position for white, but not the real knockout, yeah? Not the real knockout. Do I have a favorite video on the Chess Dojo YouTube channel? I'm not sure, ZJ. There have been some really fun episodes of Dojo Talks where I learned a lot. But we've got so many different kinds of videos. It's hard for me to compare like a Dojo Talk to an Endgame Sensei or to, a review of one of my own games or a review of a viewer's games or a game show. Very hard to say. But we did recently make this video of my best games in which we looked at like 15 or 20 of my best games ever in rapid succession while Jesse, Kostya, and Sam Shanklin said mostly nice things about me. And that was pretty fun from my side, that video. And of course, not just because, just because of ego issues, because my ego is not really that big a monster anymore. It's more like because that's kind of the crux of what I've tried to produce as a chess player was art, So the best games that I made are very important to me, right? They're kind of like the product of years and years of work. I agree, Swap for Prez. Your queen d5 line was really toasty. Black was well thrashed in that line. Hi, Luke. Welcome to the dojo. We're here checking out a game between Bishop 10-186 and a la brioche. The knights come into this weak square on d5. Black moves the queen aside and now maybe threatens c4. Trapping this bishop, and so white has to follow up this really nice knight d5 with this very sad a3. And white just needs to play more aggressively, I think. Really has to turn on a more angry mode of thought here. You should be playing moves like c4 or a4, trying to challenge the pawns, trying to blow open the game, trying to rip your opponent apart. Little modest moves like a3 just keep giving your opponent time to get castled and escape the punishment that they deserve. Right? Let me go grab a glass of water, folks, and then we'll keep it coming. All right, the water tasted too delicious, which is how you know when you're dehydrated. So that's one piece of my day, I guess. Also, the kids are in bed. Yes. Right, a nice thing about the move c4, as Swap for Prez says, is c4 has a big potential of actually getting your bishop this diagonal here. 9 pounds. Everybody happy and healthy, Dripman. Beautiful. Congratulations. Congratulations, baby girl. Beautiful. How fun. Oh yeah, Luke points out another cool move here, by the way, as we talk about a4 and c4 and babies being born. Knight takes e7. Normally it would make no sense to trade this knight, but Luke Wright is probably thinking the bishop could take the place of the knight. So that's a pretty plausible move as well. But I think as long as black doesn't lose a rook, this is not going to be maximum for white. Right, Luke? We'll be a little better off playing a4 or c4, trying to trade some pawns. And also, notice with the knight here, Luke, let's say I play, I don't know, a4 and black plays b4. And I don't know, I play something like queen e2 or something. If black ever plays knight f6, now knight e7, they can't castle. So they're actually, the knight on d5, it's not winning the game the way a queen on d5 would have, but it is making it kind of not obvious how black's ever supposed to fix their position. c4. Look at that poor bishop. By the way, folks, little calculation idea. If a4, c4, white can play pawn takes b5 before running away with this. Yes, that's a funny point, Swap. And see here, the queen can't take is the same thing. But that's why a4, it prevents the move c4 because pawn takes pawn is so crushing. Breaks up that whole structure. So it makes black play b4. Then we play queen e2. And as Swap is pointing out, I wasn't walking into bishop a6. I could answer it like this and win for white over there as well. So, all right, so we get a3. Bishop gets chased in. Bishop d8, preparing to develop the knight without knight e7. Now, again, white should be playing moves like b3 and a4. That's where to be looking. Is the baby sleeping a lot at first, Dripman? Normally the first few days there's a lot of sleeping. During the day she sleeps. Okay. Well, that's rough if she's already not sleeping at night. But yeah, you've hit that moment in life where you realize that as long as your baby and your partner are healthy, everything else is just details that can sort themselves out. No, Far Eastern. Black's doing this move here to be able to play knight f6 without getting the king disturbed, right? So it's a two-step process, bishop d8, with the idea to play knight f6 next. And then successfully castle. And white's really trying to give black time to do it, you know. B3, there we go. That's the right spirit, bishop. That's the right spirit. Let's do some damage. Let's do some damage. Yeah, there's nothing bad about black's position that a few moves of development wouldn't fix. You know? Like, you play knight f6 castles, that's probably enough to like black's position. Then they can support the space they have. B3, great move from the bishop. Okay, black just develops, holds in there. So now white can double up on the tension. Most likely white will be content to trade and then either attack that pawn on c4 with the queen or put a rook on an open file, something like that, I would expect. But doubling up your tension with a4, that has the potential to collapse black's queen side just in time. Again, black's castling in a moment, our e-pawn's hanging. So the position's not overwhelmingly good for white. But a4 will at least collapse black's space advantage. And white should be at least equal, maybe a little bit better with a4 is my feeling here. This is a very hard move to find, though. That's a GM move. That's not an under 1600 move. These are for the cash register, right? Zell entrusted them to me. One of my friends had their first baby born a couple days ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. The baby's sleeping through the days, but not the nights yet.
That sounds classic.
Yeah. Tradovich. Yep. Solid. I would say never. Aww. Uh-huh. Not you?
No.
You're gonna ask her if she wants it then? You don't really want to keep it?
Be happy if she take it.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, so what do we think, folks? Like, knight d2 could be a move, attacking this pawn, defending this one. Knight g5 could be a move, sort of pseudo-aggressive, but without the bishop on this diagonal, knight g5 is not very good. Queen e2 could be a move going after this. Rook b1, open file. Maybe knight f6 check. Hi, Neetham. How are you today? Reasonable time usage from bishop throughout this game. Yeah, black's pretty much okay here. Swap for Prez. You like that, or you want to give that away too? You don't care?
No, I think we'll use it.
Okay.
So he was 3 years old. Should do one for Zell. Oh.
Yeah. feet. Yeah. What's wrong?
Who let him make that?
My mom and I?
What is it? Oh my god, is that a person?
I don't know exactly. He was barely 3 when he made it, I think.
A little hair?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe painted
That's
one of his
pretty
funny
brutal,
people.
gruesome looking.
The color selection is kind of gross,
Would be
but
like $40 for it.
yeah, for sure. You like Queen E2, Neetham? Yeah, that makes sense. Queen E2 was one of my first thoughts here as well. So let's see. You have a very good point that Bishop A6 supporting the pawn runs into Knight B4. That's going to be great for White. So then the other possibility is going to be Knight E4 probably would be a main possibility. And now I would say Queen C4. I don't know if it's better or worse than Bishop C4, but get some position like this, right? And White has like a tiny advantage here maybe. Like if you had to pick which side you wanted to play, it feels like a little easier to coordinate the white pieces than the black pieces, right? But nothing overwhelming yet. I don't know what that is.
It's a pumpkin that your uncle gave us.
Okay.
It's dusty, that's for sure.
What other moves could black play? Probably not Knight B6 because of Knight E5. Black's just not quite poised for fighting here. Neetham, you were more interested in keeping queens on for greater violence. I understand that sentiment. But what do we do next? Maybe just rooks on B1 and D1. Maybe nothing too specific, right? Just some development. Yeah, also like a little bit pleasant for white, but as Far Eastern said, it's an advantage that could disappear in a few moves, right? It's nothing static. It's nothing written into the position. Knight D6 to knock the bishop back, yeah. Okay, we've had a move in the game. Let's see what it was. Rook to E1. Right, keeping the Aji on the loose knight. Yeah, for some reason, I was more comfortable just playing Queen C4. So my bishop would be less dangly to the opponent's queen. I didn't see a way to make any sudden, powerful moves with this bishop. I was a little surprised by my own instinct to trade queens, but that was my instinct there. Probably it's pretty similar in terms of the size of the advantage. It's probably like, you know, 0.3 or 4 either way, something in that realm. And very, very, like initiative based or something, you know? Very. All right, let's pop over to another game for a moment. I think black should be able to just castle here. They could also wade into murky waters with knight e4, but I would probably just castle and let white worry about e4 next move. Yeah, I guess if black played knight e4, then yes, white would have stuff like knight e5, hitting the queen and knight e5, bishop f4. And this swap for Pruess shows exactly why black should castle instead of getting fancy right now. Because there's just no way this is going to work out well for black. Yeah. So, castle. Let's pop over to one of our other games as well. We've got several more people who've joined the tournament. That's cool. Pawn to pawn against Captain Crazy. Whoa, we've got a queen against two bishops. That's a weird material balance. What happened? Oh my gosh, look at this tactic, folks. Bishop f7. 10 seconds? They're just like blitzing here. This doesn't make sense. 49 minutes? We're not going to watch. 50 minutes? We're not going to watch a game where the players don't think about the game. We're not going to think about it for them if they're not thinking about it, right? This looks interesting. Elite Justice against Show Me the Money. Each with a knight and bishop. See what black's appetite for a queen trade is. They do give the trade. Let's not be insulting Philidor with our chess games, folks. Let's just not do that. All right, white needs to rush this knight to e4 to cover some squares and attack some squares. Looks like black's playing is b5, but this pawn structure is not going to get better here by b5. If I were black, I'd be looking for counterplay against f4 and e5 right here. Probably play f6 in this position. Bishop a3. Right, saying if you go b5, I will take it. So bishop e7, perhaps cleanest. See what black chooses. Rook c6. Knight c4 looks great now. Uh-oh. Elite Justice taking over here. Wait a minute. This is a 5-minute blitz game. We don't want to see that either. How did that creep into the tournament? They must have played in a game in the tournament and then switched to blitz, and I kept following them. Okay. Let's then, in the interest of avoiding blitz games, let's try and grab a game from the 1600 plus group. Bishop a5. Very, very risky move from black. Now if you castle later, white will have knight e7 check, winning your queen. So you've just delayed castling by a really long time. Right? That's big risky risk. Big risky risk there with that move from black. All right, let's check out this game here from the over 1600 section. These players play 90 plus 30 rather than 45 plus 30. Yeah, swap for Pruess. Bishop d2, actually, that sounds like a good move. I hadn't thought of that, shamefully. I was thinking of rook e2, but bishop d2 is definitely correct now that you mention it to me. So white is a national master, so we got to be careful. We've got to be careful. Even if their rapid rating's not higher, National Master is going to be pretty good. And they go G4 and EF, creating a weird pawn structure aimed at Black's king. But they haven't completed development or picked a square for their king. This G4 move, which White thought about for 12 minutes, so they believe in it. This move gives me a big "it must be dubious" feeling. Big old "it must be dubious" feeling. Knight F4, EF4. How to take advantage for Black of this surely good position. You could play F6 and then sack all your pawns in the middle of the board with E5. Violent and not very subtle. Or you could try and develop as much of these pieces as you can, which would be Knight C6. Actually, where does White's knight go if Black plays F6? Does anybody know where it goes? Because if it comes here, then this move looks, you know, pretty darn good. And if it goes here, I was going to say then Bishop D4 is really good. Okay, so it goes to D3. Then let's go here. Attacking that. Stop at Knight B4. Where does that leave White? Knight C1? To defend this with the queen? Bishop G2 playing for initiative. Yes, I have initiativo. I mean, Knight D4 and E6 both look plausible. All right, I'm just going to say that White's pawns are weaker, even though I wanted to just open up the position, you know, with Knight D4, Bishop D5, E6. Seemed fine, but I'm just going to try and say that White's thing is much worse. Let's go here for White. I'll go here for Black. Here to defend this, maybe. Boom, get ye to a nunnery. Bishop H6. Sorry, get thee for any scholars out there. Rough. It's a hard knock life for White right here. This is just like clear domination from Black. You could also play this simple little move, right? I mean, yeah, no question. No question. F6 is strong. That was very convincing. That was very convincing. Knight C6 is going to be a fine move, probably. That's what I would play in a blitz game, I guess. Because in a blitz game, I wouldn't even notice that after F6, my opponent doesn't really have any great moves. I'd just be like, do I want to play F6, blocking my bishop or not? I don't know. Let me just develop. That would be blitz game thinking. White might do something like this. Black might do something like that. And White will castle. And you can see how much less impactful this was than the F6 line, right? We're not actually forcing them to trade. We're not forcing them back. We're not pressuring D4. I mean, I'd still rather be Black because White's moved this G pawn. but it's nothing special. The f6 line looks pretty unpleasant for white. Like, truly, truly unpleasant. I'm going to clip this position, too. I think it's an interesting little position. Hey, Lafong. How are you? Comment ça va? Folks, this is my good old friend Lafong Hua. Give his stream a follow, please. There's a little heart here. Click on it, click on it, click on it. And give him a follow. FIDE Master from Montreal. Great guy. Ouais, moi ça va aussi. J'ai peut-être nagé un peu trop fort aujourd'hui. Je sais pas. Je suis un peu crevé. I'm not in Hawaii yet, Dale's Karma, no. But in 1 month, I will be. Just 31 little days, I'll be flying to Hawaii. Fight. For everybody joining us. These are Friday night fights. We do them every Friday. Classical chess. How I learned French. I went to a French school as a kid, starting when I was 4. So, beaucoup de français. Let's see. F6! Right on, Fem Tantra. Brings out the big, non-trivial move. Congratulations. Congratulations to them. Nice move right there. Oh, RKDK, hey. Yeah, bonne nuit, Le Fong. À bientôt. À plus tard. Yeah, F6. Kick him. Hit him. Boom. Never play F6. It's terrible. Yeah, well, you know what else is terrible? Stereotypes in chess. Bishop G2. All right, I called that move. Now, Fem Tantra's probably going to think again here. I don't think they've decided in advance if they want to trade pawns or keep pawns. I mean, I spent about 5 minutes making my own judgment on this. I'm not known for great positional judgments, so I might have been slow. But I would expect that Fem Tantra might think about this for a moment here, too. Yeah, swap for Prez. The only other one that I've come up with is that checkmating your opponent is good. Delivering checkmate is good. After that, every other rule has its exceptions. But I haven't yet thought of an exception to checkmating your opponent is good. I mean, there are like off-the-board exceptions, right? Like you don't want to make your opponent cry, or you're winning so easily that you don't want to finish the joy of the game just yet. But as far as, you know, just winning and losing. My window has no treatments? Does somebody in chat know the word window treatments?
Apparently, they might care more about visual things than you do.
Meaning there's no shades or drapes or something.
The only thing across from it is a beautiful tree.
Okay. We don't need a treatment because there's just a nice tree outside, is what I'm being told.
I mean, some people think it frames it, but I'm not sure. They should encourage you to do some interior design.
There's always a serotonin boost when you sack a rook. It's mostly birds and squirrels there, jabbering at each other in our yard. But it's true, there are some raccoons that live in this neighborhood, for sure. We do see them sometimes. You just don't see them as much as the others. They're a little sneakier. I came up with a rhyme for raccoons the other day as I was driving along. Raccoons and baboons. Yeah. Raccoons and baboons. You know, we have a neighbor who thinks that their cats were eaten by coyotes. So I think coyotes do reach this area occasionally, but I don't think they're here like all the time.
Yeah, they're coming through the tunnel on Strawberry Creek.
Yeah, there are some creeks that are underground in Berkeley, and it's thought that the coyotes like go through the tunnels around the underground creeks and stuff. But you'd not be comfortable with all the lights on in the house and not have shades on the windows.
There's
Why?
No one across to see you.
Because somebody could see me, but all I'm doing is looking at chess. You know.
Also, the only person who could see is a tree.
And the only person, yeah. So there's nobody there who can see us, but even if they could, I wouldn't care if they could. That wouldn't make me uncomfortable. Neetham, yeah, if I ever do an interior design live stream, you should definitely check if it's April 1st. Definitely. But fair enough, Dale's Karma. You're sensitive to some things that I'm not, like window treatments. How are they going to understand my political views through my window?
Also, you never run around you. They should pay you more than we would do at stream. You know, people donate more than you have money
to do window treatments.
Oh, there you go.
My partner says if you donate a bunch of money to Chess Dojo, then we could afford shades on our windows. But I don't think there's anybody in Berkeley who would be coming for me for my political views. I do think that if I put up a pro-Trump sign, there'd be some risk of people throwing stones at us or our house or something, right? Yeah, or if I had a Tesla car, it could get vandalized probably. I mean terrorized. Apparently, if you attack anything that belongs to Elon Musk, it's terrorism. But yeah, here in Berkeley, my political views are not a problem. Knight d4. Okay, so Fem Tantra goes a different way than me. I think e6 would have been right. But I'm not very confident. You know, maybe Fem Tantra will show me how wrong I was, or we'll check with the computer engine at some point, and the computer engine will will tell us how wrong we both were about everything. So the thing about e6 is it blocks in this piece. It also gives up on playing e5 and exploding the dark squares for your bishop. So there's many things about e6 that are not really what we like. Right? Yet, the awkwardness of white trying to defend these two pawns that we don't trade, that we leave on the board with this e6 move, with queen d6 and bishop h6 maybe coming, it's just so awkward. I mean, I've come up with a better defense for white. Instead of knight c5 or knight c1, I think knight e2, just being passive and defending both of those pawns in one shot, is going to be the better defense for white. But, I mean, I don't think it's a good position for white by any measure. You know, maybe this way black goes queen b6 instead of queen d6. And, you know, bishop d7, rook c8 if we don't have a breakthrough immediately. It's gonna be a really good position for black. Any of these moves are just gonna backfire on white. They're just gonna open up white's weaknesses. And yeah, this pawn's a real problem actually, the isolated pawn. So I just leave it on the board here. So that's my take. We got knight d4. White's thinking between bishop d5 and knight d5. I would expect bishop takes, check e6, bishop drops back. Kind of a simple continuation there. Exchange of pawns. Somebody wants to know my position, my political views in a few sentences.
Not relevant to chess.
I believe that concentrations of power are really bad. And that, you know, from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. All right. Let's see. White's really thinking about this, how to take here. That was pretty succinct, right? That was just 2 clauses. That was just 2 clauses. He offered me a few sentences. I really kept that minimal. Okay, Neetham wants to see why in like this kind of e6, queen b6 line, why would the move f5 backfire? That's what Neetham wants to see, right? How does the explosion backfire? So I think first I'm probably eating your center pawn. That was my intention, Neetham. So I'm going to start by just taking your center pawn for free here. And now let me try and guess what your intention was. Maybe you wanted to go knight f4. Maybe you wanted to trade here. I don't think this trade here would accomplish enough for you. It softens up my king side a little bit, but I mean, white's pieces aren't that active, and I'm up a pawn. I can probably shelter everything I have here just fine. So you might want to try and put more pressure against my center pawn. So you're thinking maybe take on e6, right? I will take like so. You'll want to put a knight on f4 here, and you probably won't be satisfied to put my queen here, because this is an amazing square for the black queen at this point, right? White can't really kick it out with minor pieces. So I'm going to assume your plan is to go like here next, right? Attacking this piece. And you wanted things to backfire, right? Let's see if we can't. You wanted an explosive backfire. I mean, I could play a simple move like rook e8, you know, or bishop. I could play a very simple move like bishop f7. If you take on d5, rook e8 check, and if you castle, rook d8. I think you can see black's up a pawn for nothing. But if we want to see an explosion, we could try this. This is certainly riskier. Although I have to ask myself, why am I doing this? This looks really stupid. This looks really stupid. Oh, Chloe, somebody...
Sunflowers for Mother's Day, and thanks for the content.
Flowers for Mother's Day. Does that sound good to you?
That's
Or do you want a window shade?
I mean, it's so low on my bucket list to do window cover.
Low on your list, yeah.
I mean, I'd love to, but there's other things that are going to come first.
Yeah. Thank you, JDW. I have just the thing in mind that she's going to love. Although I should give a third of it to Jesse, and a fifth of it to Jesse, a fifth of it to Kostya, a fifth of it to DM Hokie, and a fifth of it to Jack. But that will still be just enough to buy what I want to buy her. So thank you very much. That's very generous of you. Very nice. So So, yeah, I think I'll just play bishop f7, Neatham. Sorry for not giving you a proper explosion. But if white wins back to pawn on d5, rook e8 check, and white's crying. If white castles, rook d8, and white's crying. So either way, I win! Right? Yeah. All right, so that's what we wanted to see there. In the game, we get knight d4, bishop d5 check after long consideration. And yeah, I expect e6, but if black thinks a while, you know, bishop e6 might be playable, king h8 might be playable, trying to preserve a more aggressive e5 kind of move. Dale's Karma, I think black played something like a Grunfeld, and white played something like a London system. But let's double check that, shall we? Okay. Exchange Slav, and then black takes it towards a Grunfeld. And yeah, white plays knight e5, knight h5, and this is where the game gets into excitement with this move here, which I labeled as dubious. And from what we've been looking at so far, I stand by that assessment. It seemed dubious. Let's see if I can click to this other game I was watching before as well, between bishop and à la brioche. So bishop found swap for Prez's nice move here with bishop d2. Knight d5 gets thrown in. Fancy, fancy. Idea pawn takes d5, queen takes is going to defend that bishop. Dang, a la brioche. Flexing the calculation right there. That was nice. White takes here and goes there. Potentially a worry for black. Bishop a6, defending this pawn that's weak. And white goes for the queen trade. No, 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 monsieur. No trade those queens. That is far too weak a king for us to be trading queens here. Those look pretty nice, but I don't know.
I'll go look and see how many pairs we have.
I feel like we don't have tons of like adult ones.
Okay. This is the box of random.
But I do also prefer the slightly rounded ones over the slightly pointy ones, and those look like pointy ones. Like they look pretty and shiny, but the tips are pointy, right?
I don't know. You'd have to look. I don't know.
Ni down. You hate when your pawn gets captured on brioche. I mean, queen d6 is not dumb because it's letting this rook out. It's not dumb. I do feel like this guy could die, right? This game could end with this monarch being slayed. So what about queen d2? Sort of starting to look at dark squares since we've got this dark square bishop, right? We've got the idea of knight e5, queen f4, and the idea of queen c3. Maybe black would play f6 anyway, making space for the king. Rook here to stop it. Rook d8 defending. But if king f7, bishop a5 on knight b6. Okay. What do I think about c4, c3 trapping the bishop? That's going to untrap the bishop. I encourage black to play c4, c3 if they get a chance to. I mean, as white, I encourage them to. You guys might really, really hate me for this because I can't even explain it. Why I didn't want to play queen d6 before and now I'm playing it. I apologize. I know it's really awful of me. It's got to stop rook e7. All right, so now I think I've got black in a kind of paralizatiatsk, you know? If the king ever moves, we take this. And I want to play bishop a5 and just win the game in a move or two. So, you know, I criticize queen d6 and White's playing almost all the same moves as me. They could play rook d6 and transpose to my variation. I don't know what to tell you. But there was more chance for black this way than my way. What a terrible chess commentary. What a terrible chess commentary. I can only laugh about it because I know there are days where I do better commentary than this. Yeah, sorry folks. See if I can figure out why queen d2 is better than queen d6. So queen d2, f6, rook d1, rook d8. Now we come here. Yeah, basically we avoid moving the bishop twice. I did move the queen twice to get to d6, but I never blocked my rooks with the bishop on d6. So I actually doubled the rooks pretty fluidly. Tempoed the bishop. I mean, even bishop c4 is just winning here, right? So maybe I should play bishop b5 for black, even though it leaves the bishop dangly there. And then we'll do the... Oh, but the bishop defends the knight there. This is much more resilient. Much more resilient, yeah. I got to do something pretty fancy here to show my advantage. Exactly, swap for Prez. I got to do it in this order, I think, to kick the knight back in advance, because I want rook e6 to be kind of a bloody threat right here to limit black's options. Because in this position, they might be thinking of a move like knight b6, because temporarily the rook's defended. I want them to lose to rook e6 if they do. Yeah, this was not easy to find, but I do believe in this for white here. And next we have the idea of also rook a1, just winning the game by surprise on the other side of the board. But okay, the crux of it comes down to this, folks. With queen d6 and this trade this way, we plug the d file against our own rooks for a moment, which slows down our rook getting to d6. You see in the game, white playing bishop d6, bishop b4. So when I say white's almost transposed to the line I gave, you see that they haven't, right? Because they had to move the bishop back and forth, black's been able to get the king off the back rank. This rook can come out. This knight's defending here. Huge, huge difference, actually. You're not understanding the position, Dales? Black's once again sort of untangling here. And, yeah, instead with queen d2, f6, rook here, here, they don't manage because this rook comes here so soon and starts bothering the black pieces. The only question, I guess, would be knight b6 in this move order, right? Uh-oh. Okay, that didn't work. We got to do this first then. But this will fix it. g3, knight here, and now queen d6. Queen takes, rook takes. Knight b6. But is this enough? Nope. Huh. So this might not even be right. If that knight b6 resource can keep black afloat. Dang, Bishop and a la Brioche got themselves into an intense game here. Maybe now white has to keep the queens on and play like this? And I think black should trade a rook. Obviously, the king is on the run. And I'll go this way towards open space just to get my rook into the game versus going here and leaving a rook trapped. Okay. Go towards open space. Go to rook d6. Queen a4. Black almost has a genius combination here, like this, you know. But there's not the follow-up. Right, yeah, e4's hanging too. That might be an idea. Maybe a counterattack. Yeah, this is not easy. Not an easy advantage for white at all. Okay, so they went queen d6. I can see why. I can't prove white's advantage myself, even though there's probably a little bit of an advantage in here somewhere. And black lands like a heavy tactical move here with knight d4. If rook d8, there might be knight f3 check. No, there won't be, because that would defend the rook. So if rook d8, black will take with the rook, I guess. If knight d4, however, black does have rook d6, taking over a winning advantage for black, probably. So white needs to trade this rook, and then when black recaptures, they're going to be supporting this square here. And they're threatening knight takes knight check. I don't have to trade the rook. Okay. What can I do? It looks like white's going to be slightly worse in a moment. Or maybe even considerably worse, because this bishop might really suffer on a2. So it looks like black's taking over the advantage here with this really alert knight d4 move. Didn't look necessarily possible. You have to look into the position pretty deeply and tactically to notice that you can play knight d4. Got to be alert. White's thinking here. Karma sees some kind of option other than trading the rook. Good, good, good. None of us are using engines, Karma. So what do you see for white other than trading rooks? Black's threatening rook takes rook, and the rook has seemingly no squares. And the knight on f3 is hanging with check. Sack the rook. Yeah, I don't see a great way to sack the rook either. mean, I guess, like, the options, yeah, if you're not trading the rook, you're sacking it, right? But, yeah, I think he's going to have to trade it. I don't see another I don't see a plausible rook sack. You know, you could get a pawn and a knight for it here. That's not enticing. Yeah. So black's taken over successfully. Impressive. Impressive. Let's have a quick look at our other game, right? The National Master. Uh-oh, what has happened to black? Here was a rook sack. Bishop d5 check. King h8, not e6. h4. Bishop takes g4. What? That was a terrible idea I had in a similar position, right? And even if white just takes, we've just traded 2 minor pieces for an undeveloped rook, you know, and coordinated all white's pieces. But white says, maybe I'll just checkmate instead of taking the knight. Also, h6 would win the game. The knight can't even get out. Queen just drops back, gets the bishop overprotected, protects the rook. Now at least this bishop's not trapped by h6. But pawn takes is still basically a mate threat. Oh yeah, it is. Check this out, folks. Let's say the knight could escape, but it can't. But it could. Let's say this move could save the knight. This is a checkmating pattern right here. Sorry, that's not checkmating pattern. This. Plugging the dark squares because we're doing a light square attack. Just a nice little pattern worth having up your sleeves, folks. Was it possible for white to ignore the queen being attacked and just play h takes g6? A swap for Prez is asking. Pawn takes, rook takes. Right? Reasonable. Pawn takes. What else are they supposed to do about mate? Right? h6. Same checkmate, right? Boom. 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 Did I see that tactic immediately, Dale's Karma? Yes. This tactic with rook h6 and g7 I saw in less than 1 second. It's not even like seeing, it's just knowing, you know? So, yeah, hg6, they can try and get a square here with this and this, but they still can't take the queen. It's still a checkmate pattern, the rook and the bishop. Yeah, it's just a matter of vocabulary, Dale's Karma, you know? Just a matter of vocabulary and exposure. Again, Ash, that's not even a calculation, you know? That's just a recitation. That's just like, that's like if somebody said to you the ABCs in correct order, you know, you wouldn't necessarily tell them that they were doing good calculating, right? It's just something they know. So pawn takes pawn was game ending right here. And beautiful. And beautiful. Swap for Prez. You haven't seen that before. Okay. Well, now you have, right? Now you're ready for it next. I mean, the people in chat watching the game haven't either. They're saying h, g6, h6, queen g5, which is menacing, right? It's menacing, but, you know, just giving checkmate is good. Yeah. Again, Karma, just to be like, I don't mean to be like annoying or a stickler, but to be really accurate, I didn't figure anything out. I just knew something, right? I'm like, when I say 2 + 2 = 4, or when I say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I'm not figuring anything out. Okay, Swap for Prez says if white goes for the queen sack, maybe black can go queen d5, right? Giving a flight square to the king. Yeah? And then check here, 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 here. So let's say maybe bishop c3 check. Pawn takes. And then queen d5 with the bishop truly hanging here. But now there's a danger that black's going to run afoul of this thing here, right? King g7 should be okay. Actually, they could even take and go to f6, huh? Yeah. Queen d5. Look at that. So was white right to not sack the queen? Not because we're losing the queen, but because we're losing the bishop? Let's put the queen somewhere here, Dabo, and then start a chase. Checkmate. Maybe he could have sacked the queen. I mean, it's not really a queen sack, as Dabo said. But maybe he could have left the queen hanging. Seems like a funny quote, Dale's Karma. I don't know exactly where that's from, but that sounds funny. Queen g2 here takes g5. Knight b5. Weird. Oh, you came up with that? I love it. And Ash, no, I haven't seen Jesse's Alyekin video. Really, truly, Dale's Karma, yeah. I mean, I don't want to make anything worse for you, but yeah. So I just want to say, King h8 is a matter of taste compared to e6. But this move was insanity. This move here was truly insanity. I guess black saw that h5 was going to be pretty annoying and started to panic here. Yeah, they must have not seen a good move to stop h5 and semi-panicked, but they could have spent more than 3 minutes if they were struggling to find anything good to do here. Because there are probably still resources for black. I would guess there are still playable moves, so to speak. The main idea, Dabo, counterattack in the center, sure. I mean, there's also, sometimes you have to play a defensive move, sometimes you have to play a tactical move, right? Like, let's say black played e6 to get the king of flight square. You know, what would you call that? I could play the move f5 to improve the bishop's scope. Yeah, e5 is the first move you would want to play, Dabo. So if you're looking at your candidate moves, starting with the move you most want to play, and then if it doesn't work, the move you second most want to play, that sort of a thing, then yeah, you could definitely start with this move. My concern there was h5, right? And then let's say you take h6. Now I feel like, oh no, I haven't walked into sacking a piece because I've got check and bishop here. So actually I'm fine with that. This pawn will somewhat shelter my king, right? So that's plausible. Okay, so we could play e5, h5, and take. Now, white has another option of taking, right? So now rook h7 is annoying. You can throw in rook e8 check if you want to, but maybe we need queen e8 to g6 to deal with the kingside situation, right? A little bit of a surprise, but looks reasonable. Hi, Miss Dogan. Welcome. Is black all of a sudden winning? I'm not sure. Bishop e4 might be intense. Might be intense. The bishop's exposed here, right? We can do something like this and sack our king position with the idea of winning this piece. They don't have queen b3 mate. But now, basically, right? Like, none of us know who's winning or losing here. It just got way out of hand in an instant. Queen h5. And if you take, there's this pattern. Nothing to calculate. Queen h5. See, you want to counterattack in the center, but here we probably have to play a defensive move right here. You want to go back a bit? There's no bishop d5 yet, Stamen, because we've got that guy occupied. But yeah, positional player, this is not their dream. You could just trade on h5. You know, since things weren't going great for us in that other position. You can play queen e8 first if you want, and then if h6, what are we doing? I think actually taking on h5 might be the tactical resource we're looking for, Dabo. It doesn't fall into any normal pattern of chess thought. It's not counterattacking in the center or whatever. But it just sort of kind of like forces white to choose between these two threats and sort of cuts through the position to what we need to do, maybe. But you believe in the queen e8 check line here. So here you want to find a move. All right, I'll let you. I think bishop g4 is no better than f5, by the way. I've looked at that. It looks pretty similar to f5. So I'll just caution you against trying bishop g4. It just gives white extra options. To me, the other candidate move other than f5 is maybe h6, but I don't love it. Okay, h6. You don't see how white responds. Well, what are you planning to do next, Dabo? Can't play queen d2 because of knight f3. Good point. You're planning to play f5 next, right? That's kind of the only move we really want to play. So I'm thinking that if white moved the king, either to f1, d2, or g1, that would be pretty logical for white. Yeah. I'll play the simplest of the moves. Why can't we play b4? It's a little bit beside the point of the current battle, Mistigan. Black is trying to get us on the e file with f5, and white is trying to get black on the h file like this. b5 for black. Also too slow compared to f5. It's a very time important kind of position. So the candidate moves for white are kind of knight f4 and king f1, I would say. And yeah, you can see that it's complicated. I don't know who's better, but I would maybe guess white is better if I had to make a guess. Seems like they got a little more coordination to their pieces, and the black king's a little more boxed into some bad patterns. But it's probably unclear in human terms, right? Just complicated. All right, let's see where they are in the game for a second, okay? So bishop g4. I mean, I'm pretty convinced that's the wrong choice at this point. There had to be some better move. I don't know if it was e5 or f5 or what. I will say after e5, h5, I think this move here, which we haven't looked at, makes a lot of sense. I understand, Dabo, why you wanted to pursue the move and the variation that looked right to you. I also always, when I've got a strong instinct, I want to keep looking down at my instinct. So I totally appreciate that, and I don't mind looking at that move. We don't have to look at my move either. I'm just going to lay it out there for you folks that this move makes sense to me for black. We're avoiding losing the pawn. We're avoiding h6. White has to choose between maybe a pawn that bothers us or maybe a rook, but either way, we're not losing a pawn. And from here, we can play knight b5 like swap for Pruess wants, or we can play ef4. There's different things we can do from here, and it looks playable. Though again, not crushing, just playable. Maybe a little better for black, maybe just unclear. But this move looks very bad for black. So let's see what's happening and if we still feel like black's much worse here. Pawn takes g6 might have been completely winning here, which is an interesting detail. I noticed somebody wondered about queen g6. And not only could queen g6 be maybe changed by bishop c3, but the most basic calculation on queen g6 is that it's not a mating pattern with the rook. Right? Just not a mating pattern. So, queen g2, g5, takes queen d6. Now the black king seems not under attack. Okay, now the black king does seem under attack. Yeah, not a lot of moves that are going to stop g7 here. So now if white goes queen g6, which they've kind of prepared with the g6 move, black has queen b2 check, hitting the king, protecting the knight, and covering most of the mating patterns. Feels a little bit like black's alive again, right? This rook d8 move is going to come, and what is white doing about the king? Evaluation maybe flip swap for Pruess, right? White plays knight d3. Okay. Basic move is rook d8, but then there is queen g6. Other basic move is just calculating queen a5, you know, and seeing does white have something about that move. That might give our queen access to c3, defending the knight and the king. This queen would be really good on like d4 or c3, right? That'd be something like the dream for her. I just want to quickly check if our other game that I was watching is still going or if it finished. Black did take it, a la brioche. Wow. Impressive. Let's check this out, since we were so invested in the game. So white did have to trade again. I mean, there was also the move maybe king g2 here, but traded again, which lets black get this nice pawn duel on d4 and c4. And then the strong king. Oh, trapping the bishop. Brutal. What a game from a la brioche. Honestly, folks. Tremendous playing that endgame. Finding knight d4 and then playing this whole position against the bishop on a2 consistently throughout the whole game. That was a great game. That was a great game. The kind of game that's going to leave white wondering, like, where did I go wrong, you know? I brought out my pieces, and they moved too many pawns. Where did I go wrong? Why didn't this go in my favor, right? Why didn't I win? And that's where you have to ask your opponent for some advice or check the VOD. Okay, let's go back to our insane game with the National Master. What do we think flipped the evaluation here for white? Knight b5 was definitely a weird move. But honestly, even after black plays g5, it's just not so obvious that white's winning. What would happen if I just took the knight? Just to have my material, right? What would happen then? Black might play a move like e6, right? Kicking my bishop. And my bishop would go somewhere. And their rook would come out. Or as Swap for Prez says, yeah, rook d8 because you've got the bishop c3 check threat. That might be even more direct / better. And rook fd8 or rook ad8 might be similar. So we're not going to agonize over which one's better till we see if white has any defense. So we just threatened bishop takes c3, queen d5 with a straight up, exchange up, no hope for white position. And if the bishop moves, we take on d3. And nobody can defend the bishop extra. So the only square is here. And then the observant player will notice, a very simple move, just a slightly confusing jumble of pieces to see through, but yeah, black's winning. G5. Saving the game. Yeah, it's just like a slightly weird position swap for Prez, where it can be hard-ish to see things. G5. Man, as soon as white's rook is not attacking, the position is already flipped on its head, which means which means pawn takes g6 was really, really critical. White played queen g2 in less than a minute, and then here the key line would be taking on d5, here, right? This line here. This was like the critical line for the entire game, just emphasizing the checkmate and being willing to play down a whole rook, right? Not recapturing this knight, leaving this bishop hanging, just going after the king. That was seemingly the only option for white. Now, our first attempt to calculate this with queen a2, we checkmated for white. We did not try this move here, leaving the queen on this queen f7 square, so it's not so clear that white has checkmate, and this threatens queen d3. So now, white could do something like this, this. It's not checkmate. Here there might be a 3-move checkmate. That's just a pattern I'm not aware of and not seeing quickly enough. Oh, if we put the queen on h4 instead of h5, that might be... No, I have not, Dabo. That might be the big difference. Now, it might have other differences, but let's try this. The point here is that if rook here, we can go check, here, check. Right? So that's... Actually, even that's not over, is it? Still some kind of calculation. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, it's over, finally. Finally!
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Do you know how to remove the light bulb from that lamp?
Which one?
That one. Would you come look? I've taken everything off. I don't know.
Oh, the one that sort of stands up?
Yeah, because I want to order a new light bulb.
All right, I'll be right back, folks. I'm going to let you all calculate on this position for a moment instead of the live position. If someone finds a defense for black, then white was busted. And if white's checkmating here, then white was winning. Handyman, handyman. Oh yeah. Successfully got a light bulb out of a lamp. Incredible three move calculation. By the way, hey filet gefilte fish. Always good to have you around. Do we find any defense for black? Queen A2, Queen E6, covering some square here, right? Oh, the nice thing about the queen check also is the king's going to have to go onto this file, huh? Maybe here. Then you just check here. And eventually, yeah, they have to go like this. You get here, here. Take that out. But the story's not over yet. Oh, it's over. Sorry. All right, hang on. Is there any way to keep going here? Check 95, right? Thank you, Dabo. I was going to find it eventually, too. Okay, the knight joins the attack. Black's still in a pickle? Perhaps. Still in a pickle? Up a whole brookle. But what is it worth? Looks like mate, talks like mate, smells like mate. Yay. Well, we haven't figured out Dale's Karma if this is winning or losing yet. We need to know if this is winning or losing. We need a conclusion to this line before we start looking at other lines. Yeah. When you go knight f7, rook takes, pawn takes. Okay, yeah, and black doesn't have enough pieces. Okay, so white's maybe threatening knight f7 next. It's hard to move any black stuff, but there's a whole extra rook to throw at the problem somehow. Seems won by white. Fizz says, I'm not seeing a defense for black anymore. I'm tempted to give up here and go back, as they're saying. Yeah, I think it's about the end. For reference, folks, I calculated this move. That's how desperate things were and how seriously I was taking my task of winning the game. And then after g7, there's a threat of queen g6 checkmate. This seems enough to end the game here. So this was like super critical. Seems like pawn takes g6 would have been the one winning move. Let's clip this position too. This was a bloody position. And yeah. Put it in here. All right, I saved it in my puzzles file. Yeah, Cameron Clark, any defense like that, the white king just kind of walks across to g1 or g2, and eventually when you're out of checks, the black king is getting checkmated. Yeah, just kind of a matter of time there from everything we've calculated. All completely winning. So, it wasn't clear that that would be white's one chance to win this position, but black plays g5, and now white can't get the rook into the attack. And suddenly, even though black could take the knight and be up on material, they just can't deal with the center enough. Now, I feel like here this pawn wasn't worth capturing. That may have been a tempo too slow as well. So white took, and that black's like doubling rooks on the, or heavies on the d file, you know, while we're capturing a pawn that's not really changing anything anymore. I guess white's still dreaming of using these pawns for the attack, right? Yeah, I mean, you have to dream, but it just doesn't seem to work out here. Rook f6, keeping the queen out. Nice. Rook c1, rook... Doesn't take the knight. Why not take the knight? I guess rook to d8, attacking the bishop. And if the bishop moves, the knight's hanging. So white played rook c1, so that on rook d8 there will be bishop c4. Fair enough, but I mean, black should still go for this, I would think. You're not going to find a better move than developing this rook. Black should be winning here, by the way. I know it's not simple. Nobody's out of the woods or anything like that. It's not like the position is clarified yet. But my instinct is telling me black's winning here. And Crowd of Rust, first of all, welcome to the dojo. Do I do chess reviews? Depending what a chess review is, probably. I do most everything that has to do with chess. So I don't know, Novest. I don't know. I don't know how like what you do is connected to where other people in the universe show up or don't show up on certain days, you know? Hard to know. Yeah, I see why Femtantra's thinking, because the bishop on c4 seems to sort of hold things together. The knight, the pawn, maybe even keep the knight on a1 trapped. So, yeah, I can understand black thinking for a bit here. The position's probably good, but you want to figure out a good approach to it. I guess my first thought would be rook d8, bishop c4, maybe give a check and then just play b5 so the bishop can't live on a good square, right? Helping people with their matches? Yeah, I mean, and I assume you mean crowd arrest after their games rather than during their games, right? But like right now what I'm doing is reviewing a game between two dojo players who are playing each other live. So that's what I've been doing the last couple hours here. That's something I do every Friday. I don't know if this counts as what you have in mind. But I look at the games live while they play them, so it has my live impressions. And then afterwards, the players will go back and watch the recording of the show. And then they'll compare what I was thinking about to what they were thinking about. So that's how we do this sort of live Friday game reviews. Yeah, sometimes I go over games that people have already played. They'll bring me games they've already played, and we'll review them together after they've been played as well. But there's something fun about watching it, in the moment. And for a player to be able to go back and compare what they thought in order, in the heat of the moment, over a period of time to what I thought in that same time, and also everybody else in chat. Yeah, I'm believing in rook d8 here. Okay, black plays rook d8. Bishop c4 comes in. 10-minute think on rook d8, but I think that's reasonable. As long as it involved, having a plan against bishop c4. If black thinks for another 10 minutes here, then it would be like, well, what did you think about for 10 minutes if you didn't see bishop c4 coming, right? Oh, queen b2 check as well, right, Stamen? Yeah, Stamen says there's another very important move here. Queen b2 possible. No rook c2 because the knight's on it. This might be much better than queen a5. And if the king moves somewhere random, you'll have rook d3 check, removing the defender of the rook. There was a knight defending the rook before. So here it feels like you'd have to go here, right, to defend this. Oh, black's so close to breaking through here. Rook d6, rook c6. And maybe b5 now, right? Because the bishop's defending the knight. And you can take it with check if the bishop wanders off. Oh, this might be the end of the game here, queen b2. In that case, I can understand spending 10 minutes on this and then double checking on the next move if he knows the game's over. Yeah, very good, VVT. I think you got it. What are my thoughts on looking at opening books during matches cheating? I think it's not good to cheat. I don't know of any good or appropriate cheating in chess. So, yeah. I can happily say that I've played like 1 million chess games without ever cheating. So, it's important. Oh, is it cheating? Yeah. Sorry, you're just wondering. Oh, you're just wondering about the rules because you're new. Are you allowed to look at books during matches? You're not allowed to look at books during matches. Yeah. You can't use any assistance of any kind. I mean, you can drink water, which I guess you could call assistance, but I mean, you can't have anyone else give you any chess information during a game, whether it's a computer, a person, something they wrote down for you in advance, etc. Wesley So was once forfeited, and this kind of is borderline. Wesley So was once forfeited in a tournament for writing words of encouragement for himself on a piece of paper. So he wrote for himself on a piece of paper something like, "You can do it," or something like that. Or I don't know, he wrote something like, I don't know exactly what it was. Something like, "You can do it," or, just focus and you got this, or, Jesus loves you and you can win this game. Something of that kind. And he was forfeited for that. That's kind of borderline because the advice is coming from yourself. In theory, you're not even allowed to write down stuff to yourself because that helps you organize your thoughts. Everything is supposed to happen inside your head. So I think technically he was maybe breaking the rule with that. But to me, that's such a mild thing that I found it a little bit scandalous that he got forfeited for that. Hey, Andras, good to see you. How's it going? Let's give you a shout out so folks know it's the real deal here. Okay, Swap for Prez has a move to maybe keep the game going for white, explaining why maybe black's calculating a little bit here. Let's see, King D1 was the real move. B5 Queen to B7. And now if pawn takes, the queen could be captured. Move just came in, by the way, and it was Queen B2. Just played. I may be totally messed up, but my instinct is to play a move like Rook E6 in this position with the idea of pawn takes bishop, queen takes queen, rook takes knight, check. I'm just sort of setting it up. I don't know what white is doing in the meantime. And if they go queen B5, I have checkmate over here. Oh, thank goodness you didn't hear what I said. I just accidentally said what I really think of you, but now that you missed it, I will instead say Andras is a great guy and a chess teacher of some skill. And folks, yeah, you could listen to his chess teaching. It might be good for you. Thanks for commenting on my game, Bishop 10186. You're welcome, Little Eagle. Great game. That knight d4 move was brilliant from the opponent for sure. Oh, it looks like you've really reviewed my notes. Good for you. Good work. Yeah, this Queen E2 mate thread I only found like 10 minutes after I came up with my idea of I really wanted to play pawn takes bishop and sack my queen. Eventually noticed Queen E2. All right, so let's see what's happening in the game. Bishop C4, check played. And white's thinking here. White's not got a lot of choices here. You're stoked for the Kochi thing on ChessCom? That's right, Andras. Yeah. Did you enjoy Ultimate Sensei as well? Do you have fond memories of it now in retrospect? After all this time? This Kochi thing is like one of my, biggest ideas for the chess world, You broke your collarbone, and so you're trying to memorize chess openings. Jeez, just pain upon pain for Crowder Rust. Okay, so the king moved, and rook d6 was played. So this threatens a very, very basic rook takes knight, bishop takes, rook takes check, forcing the king over. That's already two pieces for the rook, but if it wasn't enough, then you take the rook at the end. Oof. Maybe the queen has to claim it's defending this. Rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes. Oh no, she's actually defending it. Okay. Now, what the defense is to b5, we don't know yet. All good until you sneeze or laugh, Crowder Rust. Yeah. I was once returning from a chess tournament with Jesse Kraai, one of the other chess teachers on Chess Dojo. And we were in a bad car accident, the only one that I've been in, I think. And among other injuries from that car accident, we had like bruised and or broken ribs, right? I don't know exactly because no one ever like went in and checked exactly. I think mine may have only been bruised. Jesse, like months later, he was like still having pain exercising, and he thought that maybe he figured out that there was a bone that had been removed, that had been knocked into the wrong place or something more serious. Anyway, we were after the accident, we were in the hospital for a while, and then we were like convalescing in a hotel room waiting for another way to get home. And or not convalescing yet. We just got to the hotel room and we were like lying down. And then for the first time, one of us sneezed. And the sneeze was so painful that immediately upon sneezing, the person who sneezed started like, sort of crying in pain. The other person, realizing how painful the sneeze must have been, started laughing, and then discovered that laughing was, about as painful as sneezing as well. So then we were both there like laughing and at our pain, which was causing us more pain. The doctors examined us, but I guess not super, super well, no best for the jury, because Jesse found like a rib in the wrong place a couple months later, and the next day I was taking the train home, and I just sort of like scratched in my head and was like, what's this? And I found like a giant piece of glass that was lodged in the top of my head, and I pulled that out. So that had been there for like 24 hours. And when I say big, I mean, it was like several inches in directions, and they hadn't noticed that. So the moral of the story, don't laugh at a sneeze. No. Yeah. All right. We'll try to be less funny than normal here, Crowder Rust, in honor of you. B5 comes in. That looks murderous. White threatens the queen. And here we would think rook d3, removing the defender. It happens. Bishop. Takeovich. Now black's up a rook. It's just a slaughter. Or laughing is nothing to sneeze. Laughing is nothing to sneeze at. That's a great line, Dale's Karma. I can see why you were afraid of me encouraging you in your humor and just your clever ways of talking earlier. You must be younger than me because your wit is faster than mine. Okay, so let's just assume that Fem Tantra is going to clean up a very impressive game here against this national master, and let's go fishing for another game to watch, yeah? Sure, Swap for Prez says we could put the queen on the amazing square that we've talked about before. If Fem Tantra totally lost concentration here, you could allow queen e5 check, queen g7 mate. So sometimes on the internet, people have little lapses of concentration, not taking it as seriously as in a tournament. In a tournament, for sure, he would clean this up. He would find some very specific variation and end the game. At what age does one hit peak at chess? Generally between 20 and 30. For most players, but it varies. Depends when they learn chess, for example. Okay, let's open up our other arena here. See what other games we got going in the tournament. We got a queen ending with 2 extra pawns for black. The king's really secure, and this pawn should kind of walk down the board and decide the game for black. Right. So, for example, as Steve Nash says, right, in this game here, you could say, oh, I see some brilliant rook takes d3 kind of idea to simplify right here. You know, idea however they take, you're going to trade queens with queen c2 next. And then, oops, they don't take on d3. So sometimes trying to finish a game too soon. But beautiful move from Fem Tantra. Just covers the checkmates, gets in touch with the bishop, and starts to say, well, now you can't move anything, right? A very clean move. And Fem Tantra in the past sometimes moved too fast at the beginning of the game, but then as the game progressed would sort of focus in more and more and more. I feel like they're not going to slip up. And also I think sometimes when you're not a titled player playing against a titled player, you might be even more like, oh, I've got my chance. You know, I'm not going to miss it. You might be like extra excited and pumped up and less likely to play a loose move or a too quick move. So how is Fem Tantra doing so well against an NM? You don't have to be extra motivated. I'm just saying some people are. I'm not saying you should be or shouldn't be. I was just saying what is. How is Fem Tantra doing so well? They played a pretty good game. And they played a very complicated game. The NM actually had a chance to win the game much earlier and missed it. Yeah, I'm more like that. No best for the jury. Also, just wanting to put your best effort in every game makes a lot of sense. Well, Ash, I mean, as soon as the turning point in this game, I don't want to go over the whole thing because I've already gone over it. You could always watch. It's been really thrilling. You could watch the 30 minutes on review at some point. But the turning point was that here White needed to sack their, bishop, knight, and queen and stuff to open the H-file and have a mating attack. And once they retreated the queen, Black plays G5, and the position was just a mess. This was enough, just this moment here was enough to turn the game into a mess. Because now the rook can never get at Black's king, or can almost not get at the king. So it becomes White's maybe up slightly material if they take here, but the position's really messy because their king's always exposed. And and it was really complicated from here, and Black gained the advantage pretty quickly. I don't know exactly why, but I think this pawn might not have been worth the tempo, and I think knight b5 might not have been precise either. I don't know exactly what White should play because this position's so darn complicated, and we couldn't analyze every single move. But each of these moves might have moved the game in Black's direction or advantage. It started no best for the jury as an exchange Slav, and then White played it as kind of like a London-style exchange Slav, and Black played it as kind of a Grunfeld, g6, bishop, g7, knight f6 castles, which is a reasonable setup in exchange Slavs. People do say that. They also say endgames are boring. Some people say checkmating attacks are boring. My kids sometimes say that everything is boring, but I tend to ascribe to this idea that almost anything is interesting once you know enough about it to know what makes it interesting. Let's have a look at this queen endgame. Black's up 2 pawns, which should be comfortably enough to win the position. However, I think queen endings are the hardest kind of endgame maybe, so I would not take this endgame for granted if I were playing it as Black. I wouldn't be confident I could win it. I'm not confident that ANW can win it. I'm not confident that chat can win it. So I think it might be useful and instructive for us to look at this endgame, even though it's not hard for us to say who's winning. We can evaluate it, but would we know how to execute anything in this position? Oh, what an interesting technique from ANW. I hadn't even seen this idea. And it might be all we need to see. I had not yet seen how Black could win this position here. Oh my god, I love it. Securing the king and not only advancing the pawn 1 square, but potentially 2 squares. Oh, man. You know, I was really off on the wrong track, folks, because, you know, in a lot of queen endings, the queen's good in the center. That's one of the only things I know about queen endings, so I was thinking about it. You know how sometimes you know one thing, so you just keep trying to do that, or you know one opening or one trap. People have like a limited vocabulary of ideas in a certain position, so they just keep going for what they know, just because they know it. So the only thing I know is that the queen's often good in the center in queen endings, so I kind of lean into that idea here, right? And so I was thinking like maybe queen d4, covering the diagonal, maybe queen c4 to b3. You defend f7 and you defend the pawn, and if they check you, you can go king h7, and maybe they can never threaten you again because f7's covered. Now, this may be totally wrong, but let me just show you what I'm thinking of to make the point, right? So you can see how stupid or not stupid it was. The idea is that in queen check, we can come here, and then they can't maybe renew the threats to the king. That's how they would normally make a perpetual. They'd attack here, you'd go back to g7, they'd check you again, right? But by anchoring f7 instead of the long diagonal, I thought maybe then I can go a3, a2. Maybe it works also, but Black's solution is so much more elegant, and it really teaches us something interesting about the use of the queen in the endgame. g4. Yeah, White's going to have to try and stir something up, like throw the f-pawn all the way to f6 or something before Black queens. Just trades it. Oof. And then just gets out of the way and still covering all this. Oh, man. Not very good, Crowder Rust. You need to play games to analyze your own games to get good. You need practice playing as well. No, I don't think anyone can get... I don't think many people could get good without playing chess. How many times have I had a queen in the endgame? I can't answer you, Del Karma. I've been playing for so long. Take it home. A and W. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, if you meant only in my classical games and not all my blitz and casual games of my life, then it's a more reasonable number of games to sift through. But then again, I mean, would you count an endgame with queen against rook and knight or queen against rook and pawn? Because I've had, the famous endgame of king and queen against king and rook. That's sort of a queen ending, especially if you add some pawns. I've had queen against rook and minor from either side a bunch of times. Just queen versus queen with pawns on the board in classical time control games, maybe I've only had maybe only 5 times out of whatever thousands of games. There's not much more to say about this position, Dale's Karma. You still have a question about this game? Because I was going to go look for another game. But if you've got something that you think would chew our brains, ask away. You can always ask questions. Do I think the blitz games count? Oh, yeah, blitz games count. I have a theory that some people learn more from blitz games than other people do. Because of this, and this is maybe more than just I think the next thing I'm going to tell you is more than just a theory of mine. I think it's probably pretty established by lots of people. But people's brains work differently, right? So we may come up with similar moves in a chess game, but the thought process and the way we approach it and what our strengths and weaknesses are, whether we're using our instincts or our calculations or comparing it to other positions we've seen or, coming up with lists of candidate moves, all of that stuff is different for every person, right? So kind of similar to that, I think that some people learn a lot in some ways and other people learn a lot in different ways. So some people can play a lot of blitz games and really absorb more out of it. And other people could play that same huge quantity of blitz games and not absorb so much. So I think it varies. Knows all. I hope you consider replacing first book of Morphe in the training program. We are definitely considering that. Knows. Yes. It has been discussed by us. And thank you for the Bezos bucks. All right, so you didn't have questions about this position. So that didn't help. Oh, sorry. Oops. Didn't help. All right. Any more games still going in the under 1600 section? Looks like the games there are finished at the moment. Go over to 1600 plus, see if they've got any battles that have made it to the end game maybe. Oh no, it's a new game. It's all of these games have already, all the first games have already finished, and these players are going for a second game. Dang. Okay, knows. I can access it through the Discord. Where in the Discord did you post it? I'm in the Discord right now. Under questions. Legit question about rating, files versus games, state of ongoing dojo tournaments, plans to adjust rating conversions for CFC, coaching sessions, pawn structure, is using a board in pieces during online tournaments cheating, what are your issues with calculation, which pawn structure to learn, how do I go through a puzzle book? I don't see it. Wait, should I scroll? No, I did scroll. Search. I'll search for Morphe. No matching posts. I'm in the training program server. Oh, they're both in the same server. There's two different questions. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm very poor at Discord, as I imagine you know. General sparring, blah, blah, blah. Discussion forum. Questions. Can you help alpha test my upcoming study? Okay. Thank you for agreeing to beta/alpha test my upcoming study. Okay, I got it. Thanks for guiding me. Yeah, it's crazy, Dale's Karma. Hey, Michael W. Are you are you Coalescent, whose game we were watching? Coalescent? Sounds like you were. I had to look deeper to see that white was mating even if bishop c3, queen d5. And in hindsight, rook a1 immediately was simpler. Yeah. And then it was very exciting. But as the game got more exciting, it got less good for you, so to speak. But it's good that you could still appreciate the excitement. I think your opponents on YouTube raised the curve, yes. And Michael, I think your opponents on Twitch. I don't know if you guys had a chance to post-mortem together. Crowder Rust. Yeah, as far as analysis on your games, what you want to do is talk to your opponents after the games, if possible. It's called a post-mortem. It's my favorite tradition in all of the chess world, which is that after people play a game, they often share their thoughts about the game with each other. So usually your opponent will offer you something about their perspective that will be pretty interesting for you to hear. You know, whether they're right or they're wrong, it can be very interesting to hear the other player's perspective. And then the other thing you can do is you can play over the game yourself, looking at other moves that you could have played but didn't play. As an example, in this position here, white chose to grab more space. They could look at, what if I just developed a piece instead? And that could be an alternative. Or in this game that we spent a lot of time watching today. It's hidden the completed games I was looking at, huh? Well, anyway, there's more interesting questions later in the game, perhaps, than, should I have played bishop d3 or moved the pawn up? But basically, you look at alternative moves for yourself. So this is a Banco Gambit declined, folks, for anyone who missed the first couple moves. Right, so black offers this pawn sack to distract this pawn from supporting white's center. White chose to just develop and support the center, and if black takes, white's going to develop this bishop quickly, supporting the center more. So black instead grabs extra space on the queen side, but now white's center is unchecked, and black spent a lot of time on that side space with the pawn. Yeah, when you're new, Crowder Rust, it can take a while to settle your rating into where it should be and see how good or bad you are, or where you stack up, where you match up. But, just play for a few weeks and you'll start to see it. All right. While they're doing some thinking about this opening, black's probably going to castle eventually. I'm going to create tomorrow's rapid tournaments. So let's quickly make these little puppies for tomorrow. So it's going to be Saturday rapid under 1300. It's going to be the first section. Usually the weekend rapids are on Sunday, as some of you know, many of you know. But this Sunday is Mother's Day. So we're putting the tournament on Saturday, thinking more people will be able to play that way. Copy that link and put it into MooBot for tomorrow. Let's close that tournament, make the next one. Three hours, 15:05. Put it on Saturday, May 10th at 9 a.m. Castles. Called it. And let's make the last one the 1700 plus section. And there you go. The play command should be all updated. Let me have a look, Noves for the Dree. All right, let me just check that this board is still captured well by what I got here. Yeah. All right. So the question is, any advice? Okay, allowed too much counterplay. Let's have a look. Counterplay means that you had the play, so you had the advantage, and your opponent played for counterplay. Here you win a pawn, but for the very valuable dark squared bishop, so it's tough to evaluate. White moves the knight out of the way to try and go after the dark squares, but you do have the d6 move, so they can't do anything really concrete here. Not sure how much I love this knight retreat. Very sharp position. The accuracy stuff doesn't mean anything, by the way. Noves for the jury. F3, interesting. Knight doesn't have great moves, does it? Threatens queen h6. You got to stop that. Rook h4. Yikes. Rook h6 doesn't work yet, but this looks very scary for you. I mean, white looks better here, just because of the really good, scary dark squared bishop. Rook here, and takes. So here, white's definitely better. You forgot about the f3 move, probably. Yeah, okay. I'm not looking for a 1v1 right now, Crazy Killer. So maybe another time. Yeah. Okay. So Noves for the dreary. When you say counterplay, that means you thought you had a big advantage. Let's see. At what point do you have a big advantage? When you won the pawn? You're 16. Okay, cool. Knight g4 here. Huh. Maybe h6 g5 doesn't help you, Novest? Like, you're trying to clamp the dark squares, right? Because they've got the unopposed dark squared bishop, but somehow it just comes around and gets into the game anyway. Or maybe here, do you have knight h5? Would that change the course of the game, Novest, for the jury? Then this bishop can never get loosed, right? Yeah, I think here you played d6 because you didn't want your opponent to get this move, right? That, I think, makes sense. Although I haven't calculated knight f4, I don't know if there's some counterplay, but I think this move made sense. And then when they do this, maybe now knight h5, right? And then basically the point is to take here and cover your dark squares. Now here you look safer, right? So, I mean, one thing about this game, Novest, for the jury, is that in this position here, one of the most important factors in the whole position is the opposite colored bishops. And the opposite colored bishops increase the advantage of anybody who's attacking. They increase the advantage of any sort of like initiative, and they increase the importance of activity. Your opponent already has a pawn structure that's pretty well set up to limit or shelter them from this bishop, right? Like bishop b7 doesn't do anything amazing. I suppose d5, e5, h6 could have been an important variation to calculate here as well. But I think like a crux of this position, to think about it, is the high importance of the opposite colored bishops. At this point, the A pawn is not super relevant. I mean, it does mean that if you play everything great, you might be better in some kind of endgame, but right now in the middle game, it doesn't affect anything. It's not controlling any useful square for you. If anything, it's keeping your rook from playing compared to their rook, right? So even if you have an advantage in the endgame, and even if you somehow have an advantage here because your opponent has to avoid trades because you have a better endgame, at the moment, in terms of the feeling of the position, White's position feels good. So maybe overall you underestimated how good White's position is here, because it's pretty fine. Like in a practical level, it feels pretty fine for White. But I could believe that right here with e5, that knight h5 is a really good opportunity to maybe show a black advantage. Because if I play this really basic exchange from White, this looks pretty good. Basically, you can bring your king to g7 to keep this defended. Your bishop's got a great diagonal because the e-pawn's gone. You know, the knight's not looking too stellar here. Yeah, you castle by just tucking the king here and leaving the rook on this side as well. Everywhere's a bit unsafe, but at the moment your opponent doesn't have any amazing pieces to crush you with. And then as needed, you can put almost unlimited pawns on dark squares to cover the dark squares now, and your bishop will cover the gaps. So for example, if White played, like, let's say king here, queen here, queen here, check, you can pretty much always play f6 because your bishop will cover the intermediate squares. Or maybe e5 is safer or simpler, putting the bishop here faster, and f6 if they attack the pawn. But I'm showing the same willingness. Like, Once I put my pawn here, it shows I'm willing to play f6 if I need to back it up. So your opponent's e5 trying to crack your dark squares. It's a risky move because it does open up this guy quite a bit, right? So, yeah, honestly, I'm not even sure e5 is a good move for your opponent at like a computer level because knight h5 looks pretty good. Computer might say that h4 first was better, so the bishop can't get trapped. Even at a human level, I kind of like keeping this bishop on the board, right? I'm curious. Oh, wow. This is a computer move. I was wondering why the computer didn't like h4 for white. It's because e5, clamping all the dark squares. And then if you take, which looks devastating, right, to a human, knight h5. And there's no rook h5 because of bishop g4. And now if you save the bishop, black can play hg.